On May 28, 2024, 32-year-old Jennifer George stepped foot in Georgia for the first time ever. Beside her was her 17-year-old daughter Mary, who was visibly excited. The trip was not just special, it marked the beginning of something Jennifer had been praying for after years of loneliness and struggle. A chance to finally be happy again. But no one would have known that this same trip would become one of their greatest mistakes ever. But why? What went wrong in those first 48 hours? And how does a mother and daughter disappear for 6 months without anyone knowing where they are? What you are about to watch is a disturbing true story when trust was weaponized and promises became a trap. It exposed a criminal operation so hidden, most people don't even know it exists. This is the story of Jennifer and Mary George. Welcome to True Crime Story HQ. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe. Before she became a victim, Jennifer George was a survivor. But survival doesn't always prepare you for predators who study your weaknesses. At 32 years old, Jennifer had already lived through more loss than most people experience in a lifetime. She was a widow, a single mother, and a woman who had learned the hard way that not everyone who promises to stay actually will. 3 years ago, her world collapsed in a single moment. Her husband, Christian George, died from a sudden cardiac arrest at just 34 years old. 1 minute, he was laughing with their daughter Mary in the living room. The next minute, he was gone. No warning, no time to say goodbye. Just a phone call from the hospital that shattered everything Jennifer thought she knew about her future. She was 29 years old, suddenly alone, and responsible for raising a 14-year-old girl who had just lost her father. The grief was unbearable. Jennifer didn't know how to explain to Mary why her dad wasn't coming home. She didn't know how to pay the mortgage on a single income. She didn't know how to fall asleep at night without Christian beside her, but she had no choice except to keep going. Mary needed her. So Jennifer buried her pain deep inside and focused on the only thing that mattered anymore, keeping her daughter safe. For 2 years, Jennifer did everything alone. She worked long hours as a medical billing clerk to keep the lights on and food on the table. She attended every one of Mary's school events, even when she was exhausted. She stayed up late helping with homework and woke up early to pack lunches. She smiled when Mary needed her to smile, even when all she wanted to do was cry. The weight of being both mother and father crushed her slowly, but she never let Mary see it. Then, about a year ago, Jennifer tried something she swore she'd never do again. She started dating. A coworker introduced her to a man who seemed kind and stable. He was older, divorced, and had 2 grown children of his own. Jennifer thought maybe this could work. Maybe Mary could have a father figure again. Maybe she wouldn't have to carry everything alone anymore. So she said yes when he proposed. After 6 months of dating, she thought she was making the right choice. But the marriage lasted less than 4 months. The man she married made it clear from the beginning that Mary was not his responsibility. He didn't want to help with her college fund. He didn't want to attend her school functions. He made comments about how Jennifer spoiled her daughter and needed to put her husband first. The breaking point came when he told Jennifer she needed to choose. Either Mary moved out when she turned 18 or the marriage was over. Jennifer didn't even hesitate. She packed her things that same night and took Mary back to their old apartment. That decision cost her everything she had left. The divorce drained her savings. She had to start over again, this time with even less money and even more debt. But she didn't regret it for a second. Mary was her daughter, her only child. The one person in this world who mattered more than anything else. No man, no relationship, no promise of financial security was worth sacrificing her child's happiness. Jennifer's mission was clear and simple: protect Mary at all costs. After the divorce, Jennifer stopped trying to date. She stopped believing that someone could love both her and her daughter. She stopped hoping that life would get easier. She accepted that her world was small now. Just work, Mary, and survival. There was no time for herself, no energy for dreams, no space for anything except making sure her daughter had everything she needed to build a better future than Jennifer ever had. But isolation does something to a person over time. Jennifer felt it creeping in slowly. She had no close friends anymore because she never had time to maintain friendships. Her family lived in another state and barely kept in touch. Her co-workers were friendly but distant. Every day felt the same. Wake up, go to work, come home, cook dinner, help Mary with homework, pay bills, go to bed, repeat. She was functioning, but she wasn't living. She was surviving, but she wasn't happy. By the time Mary turned 17, Jennifer was burned out in every way possible. She loved her daughter fiercely, but the constant pressure of being everything to everyone was breaking her. She needed help. She needed support. She needed someone to tell her she was doing a good job and that everything was going to be okay. She needed to feel like a woman again, not just a mother and a paycheck. That need, that desperate hunger for connection, made her vulnerable in ways she didn't even understand. Jennifer didn't know it yet, but that vulnerability was exactly what someone was looking for. Somewhere out there, a predator was searching for women just like her. Tired, lonely, desperate for someone to see them. He knew how to spot the ones who were too exhausted to see the red flags. He knew how to offer exactly what they needed to hear. He knew how to make them believe he was the answer to all their problems. And when the time was right, he knew how to destroy them completely. It started on a Tuesday night in late April. Jennifer was sitting on her couch after Mary had gone to bed, scrolling through her phone like she did most nights when the silence became too heavy. She remembered her cousin Brianna, who had met her husband on a dating app some years ago. They were happy. They had a baby now. They made it work. So what was the harm in trying? Jennifer downloaded the app and created a profile, her hands shaking the entire time. She chose a simple photo of herself smiling at a family cookout from last summer. She wrote a short bio that felt honest, but not too revealing. She didn't mention how lonely she was, or how scared she felt every single day. She just wanted to seem normal and approachable, maybe even worth talking to. The messages started coming in almost immediately. Most of them were crude or pointless. Men asking for photos, men making inappropriate comments, men who clearly didn't read her profile. Jennifer deleted most of them without responding. But then, around 10:30 that night, a message came through that was different. It was from someone named Damon Ellis. His profile said he was 35, lived in Georgia, and worked in property management. His photos showed a handsome man with a warm smile, well-groomed beard, and kind eyes. His message was simple and respectful. "Hi, Jennifer. I saw your profile and wanted to say hello. You seem like a genuinely good person, and that's rare on here. Hope you're having a good night." Jennifer stared at the message for a long time before responding. Something about it felt sincere. He wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't being pushy. He just wanted to talk. So she wrote back, "Thank you. That's really kind of you to say. I'm new to this whole online dating thing, so I appreciate the nice message." What happened next surprised her. Damon didn't just reply with small talk. He asked her real questions. He wanted to know what kind of work she did, what she liked to do in her free time, what made her happy. The conversation flowed easily, and before Jennifer realized it, 2 hours had passed. She hadn't felt this connected to someone in years. Over the next few days, they talked constantly. Damon messaged her every morning with a simple, "Good morning, beautiful. Hope you have a great day." He checked in during her lunch breaks to ask how work was going. He called her in the evenings and they talked for hours about everything and nothing. He told her about his job managing rental properties in Atlanta. He talked about his love for old-school R&B music and his dream of owning a bed and breakfast someday. He made her laugh in a way she hadn't laughed since Christian was alive. For the first time in 3 years, Jennifer felt like someone actually saw her, not just as a mother or an employee, but as a woman. But there was one thing Jennifer hadn't told him yet. She hadn't mentioned Mary. Every time the conversation got close to the topic of family, Jennifer changed the subject. She was terrified that if Damon knew she had a teenage daughter, he would disappear just like everyone else. Men didn't want to date single mothers. She had learned that the hard way, so she kept that part of her life hidden, even though the guilt ate at her every single day. She prayed about it constantly. God, if this man is meant for me, please let him accept my daughter. Please don't let him leave when he finds out. 2 weeks into their daily conversations, Jennifer finally worked up the courage to tell him. They were on a video call late one night, and Damon was asking her about her weekend plans. Jennifer took a deep breath and said, "Damon, there's something I need to tell you. I have a daughter. Her name is Mary, and she's 17. I should have told you sooner, but I was scared you'd stop talking to me." She braced herself for the rejection. She waited for him to make an excuse and hang up. But instead, Damon smiled. A big, genuine smile that made her chest tighten with relief. "Jennifer, why would I stop talking to you because you have a daughter?" he said, his voice soft and reassuring. "That makes me respect you even more. You're a mother. You're raising a child on your own. That takes strength. I think that's beautiful." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Really?" she whispered. "You're not upset?" Damon shook his head. "Not at all. I want to know everything about her. What's she like? What does she enjoy? What are her dreams?" And just like that, the fear that had been suffocating Jennifer for weeks lifted. He didn't run. He didn't judge her. He wanted to know about Mary. From that moment on, Damon asked about Mary constantly. Every time they talked, he made sure to check in on her. "How's Mary doing in school? What's her favorite subject? Is she excited about graduating next year?" He asked questions that showed he genuinely cared, not just about Jennifer, but about her daughter too. It wasn't just small talk. He remembered details. When Jennifer mentioned that Mary loved fashion and wanted to study design in college, Damon remembered it days later and asked follow-up questions. When Jennifer said Mary had been stressed about her SAT scores, Damon sent an encouraging message to pass along to her. He made Jennifer feel like he was already part of their family, even though they had never met in person. Then the gifts started arriving. The first one came 3 weeks after they started talking. Jennifer came home from work to find a delivery box on her doorstep. Inside was a beautiful bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, with a card that said, "Just because you deserve something beautiful today." "Damon." Jennifer cried when she read it. No one had sent her flowers in years. The next week, another package arrived. This time, it was for Mary. Inside was a trendy hoodie and a pair of sneakers that Mary had mentioned wanting during one of their family dinners. Jennifer had no idea how Damon knew, but he had clearly been paying attention. Mary was shocked. "Who is this guy, Mom?" she asked, holding up the hoodie with wide eyes. Jennifer smiled. "Just someone I've been talking to. He wanted to do something nice for you." Damon never rushed anything. He was patient in a way that Jennifer had never experienced before. He didn't pressure her for photos or ask when they could meet in person. He just showed up every single day, consistent, attentive, and kind. He listened when Jennifer talked about her struggles at work or her worries about Mary's future. He validated her feelings when she expressed doubt or fear. He told her she was doing an amazing job as a mother and that she deserved to be happy. He made her feel seen in a way that no one else ever had. About a month into their relationship, during a video call, Damon said something that stopped Jennifer's heart. "Jennifer, I've been thinking a lot about us. About you and Mary. I know we haven't met in person yet, but I feel like I already know you both. And I want to help. I want to take care of you." Jennifer didn't know what to say. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking. Damon leaned closer to the camera, his expression serious and sincere. "I mean, I want to be there for you. I want to help with your bills so you're not stressed all the time. I want to help with Mary's college fund so she doesn't have to worry about student loans. I want you both to come here to Georgia so we can build a life together. A real life. A family." Jennifer's mind was racing. Was this real? Could someone actually care this much about her and her daughter after only a month? She wanted to believe it so badly. She wanted to believe that someone could love them both, that someone could take away the fear and exhaustion that had defined her life for the past 3 years. "Damon, that's so generous," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. but I can't ask you to do that. We barely know each other." Damon smiled gently. "You're not asking, I'm offering." "Jennifer, I know this might sound fast, but when you know, you know. I've dated a lot of women, and none of them had what you have. Strength, grace, love for your child. That's what I've been looking for my whole life. Let me help you. Let me be the man you and Mary deserve." Damon also started talking about Mary's future more seriously. He asked Jennifer what schools Mary was interested in, how much tuition would cost, whether Mary had applied for scholarships. Jennifer admitted that she was terrified about how she'd afford college for Mary. Even with financial aid, there would still be gaps she couldn't fill. Damon assured her that he would take care of it. "Mary deserves to go to the school of her dreams without worrying about money," he said, "and you deserve to not carry that burden alone anymore. When you both come to Georgia, we'll sit down and figure out a plan. I'll make sure Mary gets everything she needs." Jennifer started imagining what life could look like. No more working herself to exhaustion. No more lying awake at night worrying about bills. No more guilt about not being able to give Mary the life she deserved. Damon painted a picture of stability and peace that Jennifer hadn't felt in years. He talked about the house they could live in together, big enough for Mary to have her own space, with a backyard and a front porch. He talked about family dinners and holidays and building traditions. He talked about being a father figure to Mary, helping her with college applications, walking her down the aisle one day. He made Jennifer believe that everything she had lost could be found again. For the first time in years, Jennifer felt like her life had meaning beyond just surviving. She felt wanted. She felt valued. She felt like maybe, just maybe, everything she had been through was leading her to this moment, to this man who saw her, loved her, and wanted to build a future with her and her daughter. She didn't see the manipulation. She didn't see the way he was pulling her strings. She didn't see how he was isolating her emotionally by becoming the center of her world. All she saw was hope, and that hope felt like the answer to every prayer she'd ever whispered in the dark. Over the next 2 weeks, Damon handled everything. He booked their flights for the last week of May, round-trip tickets from their city to Atlanta. He sent Jennifer extra money through a mobile payment app so they could buy anything they needed for the trip and have spending cash while they were there. He even researched the best restaurants and attractions in the area so they could have fun during their visit. Jennifer couldn't believe how thoughtful he was. Every detail was planned. Every concern was addressed. He made her feel safe and cared for in a way she hadn't felt in years. But there were people in Jennifer's life who weren't as excited. Her co-worker Linda noticed how distracted Jennifer had been at work and asked what was going on. When Jennifer told her about the trip to Georgia, Linda's face fell. "Jennifer, are you sure about this? You've never even met this man in person. You're taking your daughter across the country to stay with a stranger. What if he's not who he says he is?" Jennifer felt defensive immediately. "He's not a stranger, Linda. We've been talking for 2 months. We video call every day. I know him." Linda shook her head. "You know what he's shown you. That's not the same thing. Please, just be careful. Take things slow. Don't give him too much trust too fast." Jennifer left work that day feeling frustrated. Why couldn't people just be happy for her? Why did everyone assume the worst? Damon had done nothing but show her and Mary kindness and support. He had never asked her for anything. He had never pressured her. He was just a good man who wanted to help them build a better life. When Jennifer told Damon about Linda's concerns that night on the phone, he sighed. "People who aren't happy in their own lives always try to bring others down," he said. "She probably sees how happy you are and feels threatened by it. Don't let her negativity ruin this for us." Jennifer agreed. She decided not to tell anyone else about the trip. This was her life, her decision, and she was going to trust her gut. Mary, on the other hand, was nothing but excited. She spent hours planning outfits and researching things to do in Georgia. She talked about Damon constantly, how kind he was, how different he was from other men her mom had dated, how he actually cared about her, and not just her mother. "Mom, what if he becomes my stepdad?" Mary asked one night while they were packing. "What if this trip goes well and we really move there? That would be so cool. I could start senior year in a new place, fresh start, and I'd finally have a dad again. Jennifer's heart ached at her daughter's words. Mary had lost so much when Christian died. She deserved to have a father figure in her life. She deserved stability and love. And if Damon could give her that, then Jennifer was willing to take the risk. The night before the trip, Jennifer lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Fear and hope were at war inside her. What if this was a mistake? What if Linda was right and she was being reckless? But then she thought about Damon's voice on the phone every night, telling her how much he cared about her. She thought about the gifts he sent, the way he remembered every detail about Mary, the way he made them both feel important and loved. What's the worst that could happen? She whispered to herself. We go, we meet him, and if it doesn't feel right, we come home. It's just a week. We'll be fine. The next morning, Jennifer and Mary boarded the plane to Georgia. Mary couldn't stop smiling. She took photos out the airplane window and sent them to Damon with messages like, "We're coming, and can't wait to see you." Jennifer held her daughter's hand during takeoff and silently prayed. God, please let this be real. Please let him be everything he seems to be. Please protect us. The flight felt like it took forever, but eventually they landed in Atlanta. As they walked through the terminal toward baggage claim, Jennifer's hands were shaking. This was it. She was about to meet the man who had promised to change her life. And then she saw him. Damon was waiting at the arrival gate, holding a bouquet of flowers and wearing the biggest smile she'd ever seen. He was even more handsome in person, tall, well-dressed, with kind eyes that lit up the moment he saw them. "Jennifer! Mary!" he called out, waving. Mary ran toward him first, and he caught her in a hug. "It's so good to finally meet you in person," he said, pulling back to look at her. "You're even more beautiful than in the video calls." Then he turned to Jennifer and pulled her into his arms. He kissed her gently, and Jennifer felt all. Her fears melt away. He was real. This was real. Everything was going to be okay. Damon handed Jennifer the flowers and then reached into his pocket. "Mary, I got you something," he said, pulling out a small jewelry box. Mary opened it and gasped. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a small heart pendant. "I wanted you to have something special to remember this trip," Damon said. Mary threw her arms around him. "Thank you so much. I love it." Jennifer watched her daughter's joy and felt tears prick her eyes. This man was everything she had hoped for. He wasn't just kind to her. He was kind to Mary. He cared about both of them. "Welcome home," Damon said, looking at Jennifer with so much warmth it made her chest ache. And for the first time in 3 years, Jennifer felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The drive to Damon's place was comfortable and easy. He pointed out landmarks and neighborhoods as they drove through Atlanta. He told them stories about growing up in Georgia and his favorite places to eat. He asked Mary about her flight and whether she was nervous about flying. He held Jennifer's hand across the center console and kept glancing at her with a smile. Everything felt natural. Everything felt right. When they arrived at his house, it was exactly what Jennifer had imagined. A nice suburban home with a front porch and a well-kept yard. "This is beautiful," Jennifer said as they got out of the car. Damon grinned. "Wait until you see inside." He introduced them to a few neighbors who were outside, people he called friends. They waved and smiled and seemed genuinely nice. Jennifer started to relax. This wasn't some sketchy situation. Damon had a real life here, a real home, real friends. Inside, the house was clean and comfortable. Damon gave them a tour, showing them the guest room where they'd be staying, the kitchen, the backyard. "Make yourselves at home," he said. "This is your space for as long as you want to stay." Mary immediately loved the guest room. It had 2 beds and a big window with a view of the backyard. "This is amazing, Mom," she whispered. Jennifer agreed. Everything was perfect. That evening, Damon cooked dinner for them, grilled chicken, vegetables, and rice. They sat around the table and talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories. Mary told Damon about her friends back home and her plans for college. Damon told them about his work and his dreams for the future. Jennifer watched the two of them interact and felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. This was what family was supposed to feel like. This was what happiness was supposed to feel like. After dinner, they watched a movie together, and Mary fell asleep on the couch. Damon carried her to the guest room, and Jennifer tucked her in. When she came back out, Damon pulled her into his arms. "I'm so glad you're here," he whispered. "This feels right, doesn't it?" Jennifer nodded, tears in her eyes. "It does. It really does." Later that night, after they had all showered and gotten ready for bed, Damon walked into the guest room where Jennifer and Mary were settling in. "Hey, before you go to sleep, can I ask you something?" he said. Jennifer looked up. "Of course. What is it?" Damon hesitated, like he was trying to find the right words. "I know this might sound overprotective, but would you mind giving me your passports? I just want to keep them somewhere safe so you don't lose them while you're here. People travel and misplace things all the time, and I'd hate for you to have to deal with that stress." Jennifer felt a small knot form in her stomach. Something about the request felt off, but she couldn't put her finger on why. "Why do you need our passports?" she asked carefully. Damon smiled gently. "I don't need them. I just want to help you keep track of them. You're on vacation. You should be relaxing, not worrying about where your important documents are. I'll put them in my safe with my own documents, and that way, you know they're secure." Jennifer wanted to say no. She wanted to keep control of their documents. But then she thought about everything Damon had done for them. The flights, the money, the kindness, the care. He had given them so much. And all he was asking for was to help keep their passports safe. Was she really going to insult him by refusing? "Okay," Jennifer said slowly, reaching into her bag and pulling out both passports. "But you'll give them back when we need them, right?" Damon took the passports and smiled. "Of course. They're right here whenever you need them. I promise." He kissed her forehead. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a great day." And with that, he left the room, closing the door behind him. Jennifer felt genuinely at peace. Mary was already asleep, her breathing soft and steady. Jennifer lay in the bed next to her daughter, staring at the ceiling with a small smile on her face. Everything had gone perfectly. Damon was exactly who he said he was. Kind, generous, genuine. The house was beautiful. The neighborhood was safe. Jennifer's fears had been for nothing. She whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude before closing her eyes. "Thank you, God, for bringing us here. Thank you for this man. Thank you for this second chance." Within minutes, she was asleep. The bedroom door exploded open at 3:47 in the morning. Jennifer jerked awake to the sound of heavy boots pounding across the floor and men shouting in languages she didn't understand. Before she could even process what was happening, the lights flicked on, blinding her. 5 men in dark clothing stormed into the room, their faces covered with bandanas and ski masks. They were holding guns, real guns, pointed directly at her and Mary. Jennifer's scream caught in her throat as terror froze her body. One of the men shouted in heavily accented English, "Don't scream! Don't move! We kill you! We kill you both!" Another man was yelling in what sounded like Chinese, rapid and aggressive. Mary woke up screaming, her voice high and panicked. "Mom! Mom, what's happening?" Jennifer tried to move toward her daughter, but one of the men grabbed her by the hair and yanked her back. "I said don't move," he screamed, pressing the cold barrel of the gun against her temple. Jennifer's entire body went rigid with fear. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. All she could hear was Mary's terrified sobs and the shouting of the men surrounding them. This couldn't be real. This had to be a nightmare. But the pain in her scalp where the man gripped her hair and the icy metal of the gun against her skin told her this was happening. This was real, and she had no idea why. "Damon!" Jennifer screamed as loud as she could. "Damon, help us! Please! Someone's in the house! Damon!" She kept screaming his name over and over, praying he would hear her and come running. He would stop this. He would protect them. He had to. But the men just laughed. One of them grabbed Mary by the arm and dragged her out of the bed. Mary fought, kicking and clawing, but she was no match for the man's strength. "Mom! Mom! Please!" Mary cried, reaching out for Jennifer. Jennifer lunged forward, pure instinct driving her to protect her child, but she didn't even make it 2 steps before a fist connected with her face. The impact sent her sprawling to the floor, her vision exploding with stars. Blood filled her mouth, hot and metallic. Her nose throbbed with pain. She could hear Mary screaming her name, but everything sounded distant and muffled. Rough hands grabbed Jennifer and flipped her onto her stomach. Someone yanked her arms behind her back and she felt the sharp bite of a zip tie cutting into her wrists. She struggled, twisting and trying to break free, but another blow landed on the back of her head. Pain exploded through her skull and she went limp. "Stop fighting or we kill the girl," one of the men hissed in her ear. Jennifer stopped moving immediately. She couldn't let them hurt Mary. She couldn't. A blindfold was tied tightly around her eyes, plunging her into complete darkness. She could still hear Mary sobbing somewhere nearby, begging them to stop. Jennifer's heart was racing so fast she thought it might explode. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please don't hurt my daughter. Please, I'll do anything. Just don't hurt her." "Damon!" Jennifer screamed again, desperation tearing through her voice. "Damon, please! Where are you? Help us!" And then she heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming down toward the guest room. Relief flooded through Jennifer's body. He was coming. Damon was coming to save them. He would stop this. He would make it right. But when the footsteps stopped at the doorway, no one rushed in to help. No one told the armed men to get out. Instead, there was only silence. And then a voice, Damon's voice. But it sounded nothing like the warm, loving tone she had come to know. It was cold, flat, empty. "Stop calling that name," Damon said quietly. "That's not who I am." Jennifer's blood turned to ice. She couldn't have heard him right. That couldn't be Damon. That couldn't be the man who had sent her flowers and called her beautiful and promised to take care of her and Mary. "Damon?" Jennifer whispered, her voice shaking. "What's happening? Why are you letting them do this? Please help us. Please." She waited for him to say something, anything, that would make this make sense. But what came out of his mouth next destroyed every ounce of hope she had left. "You thought all that money I spent was charity," Damon said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You thought I did all that out of love? Out of the kindness of my heart? No, Jennifer. You're going to pay it back. Both of you. Every cent. With interest." Jennifer felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. Her mind couldn't process what she was hearing. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "You said you cared about us. You said you wanted to help us. You said—" Damon cut her off with a harsh laugh. "I said what you needed to hear. I did what I needed to do to get you here, and you fell for it, just like all the others." Jennifer's entire body started shaking. This couldn't be happening. This man she had trusted, this man she had introduced to her daughter, this man she had led into their lives, had been lying the entire time. You planned this?" Jennifer whispered, tears streaming down her face and soaking into the blindfold. "You planned this from the beginning?" Damon didn't answer her question. Instead, he said something that would haunt Jennifer for the rest of her life. "You were never my girlfriend, Jennifer. You were inventory." The word hit her like a physical blow. Inventory, not a person. Something to be bought and sold. Something to be used. Jennifer felt bile rise in her throat. She wanted to scream. She wanted to fight. She wanted to claw his eyes out. But she couldn't move. She couldn't do anything except lie there on the floor helpless as her entire world crumbled around her. "How could you?" she sobbed. "How could you do this to us?" Damon's voice was emotionless when he responded. "Your daughter is young, healthy. She'll be worth more than you. So if I were you, I'd stop talking and start cooperating. Because if you cause problems, she's the one who'll pay for it." The threat was clear. One of the men grabbed Jennifer by the arm and hauled her to her feet. She stumbled, her legs barely able to hold her weight. She could hear Mary being dragged toward the door, still crying and struggling. "Where are you taking her?" Jennifer screamed. "Leave her alone. Take me instead. Please, just take me." But no one answered her. She was shoved forward, stumbling blindly through the house. She heard doors opening and closing, felt the cool night air hit her skin, and then she was being pushed into some kind of vehicle. The floor was hard and cold beneath her. She could hear an engine running, and then, from somewhere outside the vehicle, Jennifer heard her daughter's voice, small and broken and terrified. "Mom! Mom, where are you? I can't see! Mom, please!" Jennifer's heart shattered into a million pieces. "Mary! Mary, I'm here! I'm right here!" she screamed. But rough hands grabbed her shoulders and slammed her down onto the floor of the van. "Shut up or we gag you," one of the men growled. Jennifer didn't care. She kept screaming for her daughter, kept trying to tell Mary that she loved her, that she was sorry, that everything would be okay, even though she knew it wouldn't be. The van drove on into the night, carrying Jennifer away from everything she had ever known and toward a nightmare she couldn't even begin to imagine. Somewhere behind her, in another vehicle, her 17-year-old daughter was alone, terrified, and calling out for a mother who couldn't reach her, and the man who had orchestrated all of it, the man who had smiled and sent gifts and made promises he never intended to keep, was already moving on to his next victim. At that moment, Jennifer George stopped being a woman who made a mistake. She became a missing person, and so did her daughter. The trap hadn't just closed, it had swallowed them whole. Jennifer tried to keep track of the turns and stops, tried to memorize anything that might help her figure out where they were going, but it was impossible. The men in the van didn't speak to her. They barely acknowledged she was there. At one point, she felt the vehicle slow down and come to a stop. She heard voices outside, low and urgent, speaking in that same mix of English and Chinese she'd heard back at the house. Doors opened and closed, engines revved. And then they were moving again. Jennifer's mind raced with questions that had no answers. Where were they taking her? What were they going to do to her and Mary? And why? Why had Damon done this? What did he mean when he said they had to pay him back? None of it made sense. All Jennifer could do was lie there in the dark and pray that somehow, some way, they would survive this. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the van came to a stop. The engine cut off. Jennifer heard the front doors open and close, then footsteps coming around to the back. The rear doors swung open and hands grabbed her, dragging her out of the van. Her legs buckled when her feet hit the ground. They had gone numb from lying in the same position for so long. Someone held her upright while another person cut the zip ties from her wrists. Blood rushed back into her hands and the pain was immediate and sharp. Jennifer gasped, but before she could say anything, someone ripped the blindfold off her face. Light flooded her vision and she squinted, trying to adjust. When her eyes finally focused, what she saw made her stomach drop. They were standing in front of a large, nondescript warehouse. It looked abandoned from the outside. Faded paint, boarded-up windows, overgrown weeds around the perimeter. But there were vehicles parked nearby, and men standing guard at the entrance with weapons visible on their hips. This wasn't some random location. This was organized, professional, terrifying. One of the men shoved Jennifer forward toward the entrance. "Move," he barked. Jennifer stumbled but forced her legs to work. She looked around desperately, searching for Mary, but she didn't see her anywhere. Panic gripped her throat. "Where's my daughter?" Jennifer demanded, her voice hoarse. "Where is she? I want to see her." The man ignored her and shoved her harder. "I said move." They pushed her through a metal door and into the building. The inside was nothing like the outside. The warehouse had been completely transformed into some kind of medical facility. The air smelled sterile and chemical, like a hospital but worse. Jennifer's eyes widened as she took in the scene before her. There were rows and rows of beds, maybe 20 or 30 of them, lined up in the massive open space. Women were lying on those beds. Some were hooked up to IVs. Some were moaning in pain. Some were just staring blankly at the ceiling, their faces hollow and empty. Jennifer saw medical equipment everywhere. Ultrasound machines, surgical tools laid out on metal trays, monitors beeping softly. Men in surgical masks moved between the beds, checking clipboards, adjusting IVs, speaking to each other in low voices. Some of the men looked Chinese. Some looked Georgian or Eastern European. A few looked American, but none of them looked like real doctors. There was something wrong about all of this. Something deeply, horrifyingly wrong. Jennifer's legs almost gave out beneath her. This wasn't a kidnapping for ransom. This was something else, something much worse. One of the masked men approached her, his eyes cold and analytical, as he looked her up and down like she was livestock. He said something in Chinese to the men holding Jennifer, and they nodded. "What is this place?" Jennifer whispered, her voice shaking. "What are you going to do to me?" The masked man didn't answer. He just gestured for the guards to take her away. Jennifer tried to resist, tried to dig her heels into the ground, but they were too strong. They dragged her toward the back of the warehouse, past the rows of suffering women, toward a hallway lined with doors. And then Jennifer heard it, a scream, a young, terrified scream that she would recognize anywhere. "Mary!" Jennifer shrieked, trying to twist out of the guard's grip. "Mary! Baby, I'm here! I'm here!" She saw her daughter then, just for a moment, being dragged down a different hallway by two men. Mary's face was streaked with tears, her eyes wide with terror. "Mom!" Mary screamed, reaching out toward Jennifer. "Mom, please! Don't let them take me! Please!" Jennifer fought with everything she had, kicking and clawing and screaming, but the guards held her tight. "Let me go! That's my daughter! She's just a child! Don't touch her! Please, God, don't touch her!" The man didn't respond. He just nodded to someone behind Jennifer, and before she could react, she felt a sharp pinch in her arm. She looked down and saw a syringe being pulled out of her skin. What did you give me?" Jennifer's words started to slur. The hallway tilted sideways. Her legs turned to jelly. The last thing she heard before everything went black was her own voice, weak and desperate, calling out for her daughter. "Mary, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." When Jennifer woke up, she had no idea how much time had passed. Her head throbbed and her mouth was dry as sand. She was lying on a thin, uncomfortable mattress that smelled like bleach and sweat. She blinked several times, trying to clear the fog from her brain, and slowly sat up. She was in a bunk bed, the bottom bunk, in a room that looked more like a prison dormitory than anything else. There were 5 other bunk beds crammed into the small space, which meant there could be up to 12 women in this room. Jennifer looked around and counted 9 other women, all in various states of consciousness. Some were sleeping. Some were sitting on their beds, staring at nothing. One woman was crying quietly in the corner. None of them looked at Jennifer. None of them seemed to care that she was there. Jennifer's hands were shaking as she swung her legs over the side of the bed. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice cracking. "What is this place?" One of the women, a pale, thin woman with blonde hair and dark circles under her eyes, glanced at Jennifer briefly before looking away. "You're in hell," the woman said in a thick Russian accent. "That's where you are." Jennifer's stomach twisted. "I need to find my daughter. They took my daughter. She's 17. Have you seen her? Please, have you seen a teenage girl?" The Russian woman shook her head. "They don't bring the young ones here. They keep them separate. Better value, they say." Jennifer felt like she was going to be sick. She pressed her hands against her face and tried to breathe, tried to think, tried to figure out what to do. But there was nothing to do. No windows, no obvious exits. Just concrete walls and locked doors and the smell of fear and desperation. "What do they want from us?" Jennifer whispered. "Why are we here?" Another woman spoke up, this one with darker skin and an accent Jennifer couldn't place. "They take our eggs," the woman said flatly. "Every month. Hormones first. Then they take the eggs. Then they sell them. That's all we are to them. Egg factories." Jennifer's blood ran cold. What? No, no, that's not possible. That's illegal. Someone would know. Someone would. The Russian woman laughed bitterly. No one knows. No one cares. We disappear. They make money. That's how it works. Over the next few days, or maybe it was weeks, Jennifer couldn't tell anymore. She learned the horrifying truth about where she was. This facility was run by a Chinese trafficking syndicate that operated across multiple countries. They trafficked women from all over the world, Eastern Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and now America, and forced them into illegal egg harvesting operations. The process was brutal and dehumanizing. First, the women were given hormone injections to force their ovaries to produce multiple eggs at once. The injections made them sick. Nausea, headaches, mood swings, bloating. Then, every 28 to 30 days, the women were taken to a procedure room where their eggs were extracted. There was no real anesthesia. Maybe a local numbing agent if they were lucky, but usually nothing. The procedure was invasive and painful. A needle was inserted through the vaginal wall and into the ovaries to suction out the eggs. Women screamed, women bled, women begged for it to stop, but it never stopped. Jennifer's entire world shrank down to one single thought: Mary. Every waking moment, every painful injection, every humiliating procedure, all Jennifer could think about was her daughter. Was Mary okay? Were they hurting her? Was she scared? Did she blame Jennifer for bringing her here? Jennifer couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't function beyond the bare minimum required to survive. The guilt was crushing her from the inside out. She had failed as a mother in the worst possible way. She had handed her child over to monsters because she was lonely and desperate and stupid. And now Mary was somewhere in this same building, going through the same horrors, and Jennifer couldn't do anything to protect her. One night, about 3 weeks into her captivity, Jennifer watched as one of the women in her room started hemorrhaging after a botched egg retrieval procedure. The woman's name was Elena, and she was only 22 years old. She had been bleeding for hours, crying out in pain, begging for help. But no one came. The other women tried to comfort her, tried to stop the bleeding with towels and pressure, but it wasn't enough. By morning, Elena was dead. The guards came in, wrapped her body in a sheet, and carried her out like she was garbage. No one acknowledged what had happened. No one mourned her. She was just gone. And Jennifer realized with absolute certainty that she and Mary might die in this place. They might never see home again. They might never be free. And no one would ever know what happened to them. Every night Jennifer prayed, but she didn't pray for rescue. She didn't pray for justice. She didn't even pray for her own survival. She prayed for Mary. She prayed that her daughter was still alive. She prayed that Mary wasn't in too much pain. She prayed that somehow, some way, Mary would survive this and make it home. Even if Jennifer didn't. Even if this place became her grave. As long as Mary lived, Jennifer could endure anything. That was the only thing that kept her going. The only thing that stopped her from giving up. Completely. The love of a mother for her child. The one thing these monsters couldn't take away from her, no matter how hard they tried. Mary, on the other hand, was taken to the youth section. She fought every step of the way, kicking and screaming and begging them to let her go. But it didn't matter. They were too strong. They pulled her through a heavy metal door and into another section of the warehouse. This area was smaller, with fewer beds, but the girls lying on them were all young, teenagers, maybe early 20s at most. Some of them looked at Mary with hollow, dead eyes. Others didn't even bother looking up. Mary's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might explode. "What is this place?" she whispered. "What are you going to do to me?" One of the men shoved her into a small room with 2 bunk beds and locked the door behind her. Mary ran to the door and pounded on it with her fists. "Let me out, please. I want my mom. Let me see my mom." But no one answered. No one came. Mary collapsed on the floor and sobbed. She had never felt so alone in her entire life. Her dad was dead. Her mom was gone, maybe dead too for all Mary knew, and she was trapped in this horrible place with no way out and no idea what they wanted from her. She thought about Damon and how kind he had seemed, how he had sent her gifts and asked about her dreams and made her feel important. He had hugged her at the airport. He had called her beautiful. He had promised to help her and her mom build a better life. And it was all a lie. Every single word, every smile, every gift. He had been planning to do this to them the whole time. Mary felt sick. She felt stupid. She felt like she should have known something was wrong. But how could she have known? He was an adult. Her mom had trusted him. If her mom couldn't see through his lies, how was Mary supposed to? The next few days were a blur of horror. The masked men came into Mary's room multiple times a day. They gave her injections that made her feel sick and dizzy. They told her the injections were necessary, and that if she resisted, things would get much worse for her. Mary tried to fight at first, but after they hit her hard enough to split her lip, she stopped. She learned quickly that fighting only made the pain worse. The injections made her body feel wrong, bloated and uncomfortable, with cramps that doubled her over. She asked what they were giving her, but no one would answer. The other girl in her room, a thin, pale girl who looked about 19, finally told her. "Hormones," the girl said quietly. "They're making your ovaries produce eggs, and then they'll take them. It hurts. I'm sorry." Mary didn't understand. "Take them? Take what? What are you talking about?" The girl looked at her with sad, tired eyes. "Your eggs. They're going to harvest your eggs and sell them. That's what this place is. That's what we are to them." Mary felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. No, that's not. They can't do that. That's illegal. That's... But even as she protested, Mary knew the girl was telling the truth. These people didn't care about laws. They didn't care about anything except money. And Mary was just inventory to them, a product to be used and sold. The psychological torture was worse than the physical pain. One of the men who came to give Mary her injections told her that her mother was dead. "She fought too much," he said with a shrug. "So we got rid of her. You're alone now. No one's coming for you. No one even knows you're missing." Mary screamed that he was lying, but he just laughed and walked out. She didn't know if it was true. She had no way of knowing. But the possibility that her mom was dead, that she had died trying to protect Mary, was unbearable. Mary cried until she had no tears left. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen shut. And then she just stopped. She stopped crying. She stopped talking. She stopped reacting to anything they said or did. It was like a switch flipped inside her brain and everything shut down. They told her other things too, designed to break her spirit completely. They told her she'd never go home. They told her that even if she escaped, no one would believe her story. They told her that if she caused problems, they would kill her and dump her body somewhere no one would ever find it. They told her she was worthless. They told her she was nothing. And slowly, Mary started to believe them. What was the point of fighting? What was the point of hoping? Her mom was probably dead. Her family back home had no idea where she was. Damon, or whatever his real name was, had covered his tracks too well. No one was coming to save her. This was her life now, and it would be until she died. The egg retrieval procedures were the worst part. Every month, Mary was taken to a sterile room where men in masks performed the extraction. There was no real anesthesia, just a numbing shot that barely worked. They inserted a needle through her vaginal wall and into her ovaries, and the pain was so intense Mary thought she would pass out. She screamed and begged them to stop, but they didn't. They just kept going until they had extracted every viable egg. Afterward, Mary was left bleeding and cramping, barely able to walk. The recovery was brutal. She bled for days. She ran fevers. She felt like her insides were being torn apart. And just when she started to feel a little better, it was time for the hormone injections to start again. The cycle never ended. Mary's mind started to break under the weight of the trauma. She stopped eating because food made her nauseous and she didn't see the point anyway. The guards would force feed her sometimes, shoving spoonfuls of rice or bread into her mouth until she choked it down. She stopped responding to commands. When they told her to stand, she stayed sitting. When they told her to move, she stayed still. They hit her for it. But Mary didn't care anymore. The pain didn't matter. Nothing mattered. She retreated so far into herself that it felt like she was watching everything happen from a distance, like it was happening to someone else and not to her. The doctors called it dissociation. Mary just called it survival. The other girls in the youth section tried to reach out to Mary, tried to comfort her, but they were just as broken as she was. There was a 16-year-old girl from the Philippines who had been trafficked by her own uncle. There was an 18-year-old from Ukraine who had been promised a job as a nanny in America. There was a 20-year-old from Honduras who had been kidnapped while crossing the border. All of them had similar stories. All of them had been betrayed by someone they trusted. And all of them had given up hope of ever leaving this place alive. They formed a strange, sad bond, broken girls trying to survive in hell together. But none of them could really help each other. They were all too damaged, too defeated, too lost. The question that haunted Mary more than anything else was simple and devastating. Why did my mom bring me here? Mary knew logically that her mother hadn't known this would happen. She knew Damon had lied to them both, but the anger and betrayal still consumed her. Her mom was supposed to protect her. Her mom was supposed to keep her safe. And instead, her mom had trusted a stranger on the internet and dragged Mary halfway across the country into a trap. If her mom had just been more careful, if her mom had listened to her instincts, if her mom had said no, then none of this would be happening. Mary would be home. She'd be safe. She'd be preparing for her senior year of high school instead of lying in a concrete room having her body violated over and over again. The unfairness of it all made Mary want to scream, but she didn't scream. She just stayed silent. Mary kept one thing with her through everything, the small silver necklace Damon had given her at the airport. She knew she should throw it away. She knew it was a symbol of his lies and manipulation, but it was also the last piece of her old life. The last reminder that there had been a time, even if it was brief, when she thought things were going to get better. Every night, Mary would hold that necklace in her hand and whisper her mother's name. "Mom," she'd say into the darkness. "If you're alive, please find me. Please don't leave me here. I'm sorry I blamed you. I'm sorry I was angry. I just want to go home. Please, Mom. Please." But no one ever answered. And as the months dragged on, Mary stopped believing anyone ever would. In 6 months, Mary George went from a 17-year-old girl with dreams of college and fashion design to a shell of a person who barely remembered what hope felt like. She had aged a lifetime in that warehouse. And the worst part was knowing that even if she survived this, even if she somehow made it out, she would never be the same girl she was before. That girl was gone, dead, buried under layers of trauma that would never fully heal. And all because her mother had opened a dating app and trusted the wrong man. For months, he profited from their bodies. But profit wasn't enough. He wanted more. And that greed would be his undoing. The syndicate was making a fortune off Jennifer and Mary. Every month, when their eggs were harvested, those eggs were immediately packaged and shipped to buyers on the international black market. Fertility clinics in countries with loose regulations paid top dollar for American eggs, especially from women with clean medical histories and desirable genetic profiles. Jennifer and Mary fit the criteria perfectly. Healthy, no major genetic disorders, good family medical background. Their eggs were labeled as premium product and sold for anywhere between $15,000 to $50,000 per cycle. Jennifer alone had generated over $200,000 for the syndicate in 6 months. Mary, being younger, had produced even more. The operation was ruthlessly efficient and sickeningly profitable. But the man who had delivered them to this nightmare wasn't satisfied with his cut. His real name wasn't Damon Ellis, it was Terrell Booker. Terrell had a criminal record that stretched back to his early 20s. Fraud, identity theft, credit card scams. He'd served 2 years in prison for wire fraud and came out with even worse connections than when he went in. That's where he met people who introduced him to human trafficking. Not the sex trafficking that most people think of, but something quieter and more hidden: medical trafficking, organ harvesting, egg harvesting, surrogacy farms. There was a whole underground economy built on human bodies, and Terrell realized he could make serious money as a recruiter. His job was simple: find vulnerable women, gain their trust, and deliver them to the syndicate. He got paid per victim, with bonuses if they were young, healthy, and American. Terrell had perfected his system over the past 3 years. He created fake dating profiles with stolen photos and carefully crafted backstories. He studied psychology articles on manipulation and grooming. He learned exactly what lonely, desperate women wanted to hear, and then he delivered them like packages. Jennifer and Mary weren't his first victims. They weren't even his 10th. But they were supposed to be just another payday. Terrell had been paid $20,000 for delivering them both. The syndicate kept all the profits from the egg sales, and Terrell was supposed to move on to his next target. But 6 months later, watching the money pour in from Jennifer and Mary's harvests, Terrell started to feel cheated. He'd done all the work, spent weeks grooming Jennifer, buying gifts, building trust, arranging their travel. And for what? A one-time payment while the syndicate made hundreds of thousands off his delivery? It wasn't fair. Terrell convinced himself that he deserved more. So he came up with a plan that was as greedy as it was stupid. He would contact Jennifer's family and demand a ransom. The syndicate would never know. He'd get the money, the family would get their loved ones back, and everyone would win. At least, that's what Terrell told himself. What he didn't consider was that ransom demands leave trails, and trails lead to arrests. Terrell spent days researching Jennifer's family on social media. He found her sister, Shayna George, who lived in the same city Jennifer had come from. Shayna's Facebook profile was semi-public, and Terrell could see photos of family gatherings, posts about missing Jennifer and Mary, desperate pleas for anyone with information to come forward. The family had filed missing persons reports, but the case had gone cold. No one knew where Jennifer and Mary had gone after landing in Atlanta. No one had any leads. The police had interviewed Terrell early on. He was the last person Jennifer had told friends about. But his fake identity held up under basic questioning. He'd covered his tracks well, or so he thought. On a Tuesday night in late November, 6 months after Jennifer and Mary had disappeared, Shayna received a message on Facebook from an account with no profile picture and no friends. The message was short and terrifying. "Your sister and niece are alive. If you want them back, it'll cost you." Shayna's hands shook as she read the words over and over. She immediately called her husband into the room. "Oh my God. Oh my God. Someone knows where they are." She typed back with trembling fingers. "Who is this? Where are they? Are they okay?" The response came 2 minutes later. "They're alive, but they won't be for long if you don't pay. $80,000. Bitcoin. You have 1 week. If you contact the police, I'll know, and they'll disappear forever. This is your only chance." Shayna started crying. She didn't know what to do. $80,000 was more money than she had, more money than anyone in her family had. But if there was even a chance that Jennifer and Mary were alive, she had to try. She immediately called the rest of the family, her parents, her aunts and uncles, Jennifer's late husband's family. Everyone gathered at Shayna's house that night, trying to figure out what to do. Some people said they should call the FBI immediately. Others said they couldn't risk it. If the kidnapper found out, he might kill Jennifer and Mary. The family was torn between hope and fear, between following the law and doing whatever it took to bring their loved ones home. Shayna made the decision. "We pay first," she said, her voice firm despite the tears streaming down her face. "We get them back, and then we let the police handle whoever did this. But I'm not risking their lives. We do not contact the police. Not yet." So the family went into action. Shayna and her husband put their house up for sale. Jennifer's parents sold the small rental property they owned. Family members took out loans, emptied savings accounts, borrowed from friends. Shayna even set up a crowdfunding campaign online, claiming it was for a medical emergency. She couldn't reveal the truth without risking the kidnapper finding out. The donations came in slowly but steadily. Strangers who had seen the missing persons posts contributed what they could. 3 days before the deadline, they had scraped together $79,000. Close enough. But what Shayna didn't tell her family was that she had already contacted the FBI in secret. The very next morning after receiving the ransom message, she drove to the local FBI field office and walked in alone. She met with agents privately and begged them not to interfere with the ransom payment. "Please, just track him, build your case, but let me pay first and get them back safely," she pleaded. The agents understood. They had seen cases like this before. They agreed to monitor from a distance, to let the transaction go through, but to use it to track down the kidnapper. Shayna returned home and told her family nothing. She let them believe she was following their plan to pay first and involve police later. But from that moment on, the FBI had been watching every move Terrell made. Shayna contacted the kidnapper through the Facebook messages. "We have the money. How do we send it?" Terrell, sitting in his apartment and feeling very pleased with himself, sent back detailed instructions. The money needed to be converted to Bitcoin and transferred to an encrypted wallet address he provided. Shayna had never used Bitcoin before and had to get help from a tech-savvy cousin to figure it out. The process took hours, setting up a Bitcoin account, transferring money from the bank, converting it to cryptocurrency, and finally sending it to the wallet address. When it was done, Shayna messaged the kidnapper again. "It's sent. All of it. Now please, give them back to us." Terrell checked his Bitcoin wallet and confirmed the transfer had gone through. $80,000, all his. He smiled. "You'll get them back in 48 hours. Stay by your phone." But Terrell had no idea he was already being watched. The FBI had been monitoring every communication between Shayna and the kidnapper from the beginning. They were tracking the Bitcoin transaction in real time. They were building a case. And they were waiting for Terrell to make a mistake. He made several. First, Terrell had used his personal cell phone to send the Facebook messages. He thought using a fake account would protect him, but he didn't realize that Facebook tracks IP addresses and device identifiers. The FBI subpoenaed Facebook and traced the messages back to Terrell's phone. Second, when Terrell accessed his Bitcoin wallet to check the transfer, he did it from his home internet connection. Bitcoin transactions are recorded on a public ledger, and while the wallet itself was anonymous, the IP address used to access it was not. The FBI traced that IP address directly to Terrell's apartment in Atlanta. Third, Terrell had been sloppy about his fake identity. When the FBI dug deeper into Damon Ellis, they found inconsistencies, stolen photos, a phone number registered under a different name, an address that didn't match property records. And when they cross-referenced everything, they found Terrell Booker, a 35-year-old convicted fraudster with known ties to criminal networks. The pieces fell into place quickly. The FBI now had a name, an address, and evidence linking Terrell to the ransom demand, but they still needed to find Jennifer and Mary. So they watched and waited. Terrell, completely unaware that he was being monitored, coordinated with the syndicate to release the two women. He told them he'd found a buyer who wanted both women for a private surrogacy arrangement overseas, and that they needed to be released so they could be transported. The syndicate didn't care. They'd already extracted as much value from Jennifer and Mary as they could. The women were becoming liabilities anyway. Jennifer had started showing signs of infection, and Mary had stopped eating and was losing weight. They were no longer profitable, so the syndicate agreed to release them. 2 days after Shayna sent the Bitcoin payment, Jennifer and Mary were pulled from their rooms in the middle of the night. They were given sedatives, strong enough to make them groggy and compliant, but not strong enough to knock them out completely. Blindfolds were tied around their eyes, and they were led out of the warehouse and into a van. Neither of them knew what was happening. Jennifer thought they were being moved to another facility. Mary thought they were being taken somewhere to be killed. The drive lasted about an hour. When the van finally stopped, the doors opened and rough hands dragged them out. Jennifer felt pavement under her bare feet. She heard the sound of cars driving past. And then the hands let go. She and Mary collapsed onto the ground. Their blindfolds were ripped off and their passports were tossed next to them. "You're free," one of the men said in accented English. "Don't come back." And then the van drove away, leaving them alone on the side of a dark, empty highway in rural Georgia. Jennifer and Mary lay there for several minutes, too disoriented and terrified to move. They were free, but they had no idea where they were. No phones, no money, nothing but the clothes on their backs and their passports. Jennifer managed to sit up and looked around. They were on a two-lane highway with nothing but trees on either side. It was the middle of the night and there were no cars in sight. She turned to Mary, who was curled up on the ground, shaking. "Mary," Jennifer whispered, her voice hoarse. "Baby, we're okay. We're out. We're going to be okay." But Mary didn't respond. She just stared straight ahead with empty, broken eyes. 20 minutes later, a pickup truck came down the highway and spotted them. The driver, an older man on his way home from a night shift, pulled over immediately. He took one look at Jennifer and Mary, barefoot, bruised, disoriented, and knew something terrible had happened. He didn't ask questions. He just called 911. Within 30 minutes, police and ambulances arrived. Jennifer and Mary were wrapped in blankets and loaded into an ambulance. As they drove toward the hospital, Jennifer held her daughter's hand and cried. They were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. But Terrell Booker's greed had just sealed his fate, and the FBI was already closing in. Before moving on, a quick thank you to everyone watching and supporting this channel. Your presence truly keeps it alive. This community continues to grow because of people who believe in real, meaningful storytelling. Becoming a channel member unlocks exclusive extras, behind-the-scenes content, and directly helps us bring more powerful, true stories to light. Your support makes a real difference, and we'd love to know who's here. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. If you're still tuned in right now, write, "I'm still here," in the comments. Let's see who's watching till the end. Don't forget to like this video too. Now, let's continue. At the hospital, Jennifer and Mary were taken to separate examination rooms. Jennifer panicked immediately. "No, please don't separate us," she begged the nurses. "She needs me. I need to be with her." But the medical staff explained that they needed to do thorough examinations, and it would be easier if they worked separately. Jennifer reluctantly agreed, but only after they promised she could see Mary as soon as they were done. The examination was humiliating and painful. Doctors and nurses moved around Jennifer, poking and prodding, taking blood samples, asking invasive questions. They documented everything: the bruises on her arms from being restrained, the needle marks from the hormone injections, the internal damage from the egg retrieval procedures. Jennifer answered their questions as best as she could, but her mind kept drifting to Mary. Was her daughter going through the same examination right now? Was she scared? Was she crying? The medical evaluation results were devastating. Both Jennifer and Mary showed signs of severe malnutrition and dehydration. Their bodies had been pushed to the breaking point with little food or care. Jennifer had lost nearly 30 pounds. Mary had lost even more. They both had infections. Jennifer's was in her reproductive system, likely from the unsanitary conditions during the procedures. The doctors explained that Jennifer had internal scarring from the repeated egg retrievals, and there was a strong possibility she would never be able to conceive again. Jennifer barely reacted to the news. She had never planned to have more children anyway. But hearing that the choice had been taken from her, that her body had been damaged beyond repair, made her feel hollow inside. She wasn't a person anymore. She was just broken parts that used to work. Mary's results were even worse. The doctors found severe pelvic trauma from the forced egg retrievals. Because Mary was so young, her body hadn't been ready for the aggressive hormone treatments and invasive procedures. The damage was extensive. She would need surgery to repair some of it, and even then, the doctors couldn't promise she'd ever be able to have children. Mary was 17 years old, and her future had already been stolen from her. When the doctors told Jennifer about Mary's condition, Jennifer broke down completely. She sobbed so hard she couldn't breathe, clutching her chest as wave after wave of guilt crashed over her. This was her fault. All of it. She had brought Mary to Georgia. She had trusted Terrell. She had handed her daughter over to monsters. And now Mary would carry the scars of Jennifer's mistakes for the rest of her life. The psychological evaluations were just as grim. A trauma specialist came to speak with both of them separately. Jennifer was diagnosed with severe PTSD and what the doctor called survivor's guilt. Jennifer was haunted by the belief that she should have known better, should have protected Mary, should have died instead of putting her daughter through this nightmare. The therapist tried to tell Jennifer that she was a victim too, that Terrell had manipulated and deceived her, that none of this was her fault. But Jennifer couldn't accept it. "I'm her mother," Jennifer said through tears. "I was supposed to protect her. That's my one job. And I handed her to a monster because I was lonely and stupid. How is that not my fault?" Mary's diagnosis was even more concerning. The doctors said she was experiencing selective mutism and severe dissociation. Her mind had retreated so far inward as a defense mechanism that she had essentially shut down. She wouldn't speak. She wouldn't make eye contact. She wouldn't respond to questions or commands. When nurses tried to feed her, she would only eat if they physically put food in her mouth and reminded her to chew. It was like Mary had disappeared inside herself and left behind an empty shell. The doctors warned that this level of trauma could take years to recover from, if she recovered at all. Some patients never came back. Some stayed locked inside their own minds forever. Jennifer listened to the doctor's words and felt her heart shatter into pieces. She had lost her daughter. Mary was alive, breathing, sitting right in front of her, but she was gone. The FBI arrived at the hospital later that day. 2 agents, a woman named Special Agent Carolyn Mitchell and a man named Agent Rodriguez, sat down with Jennifer in a private room and asked her to tell them everything. Jennifer described it all: the dating app, the messages from Damon, the gifts, the video calls, the trip to Georgia, the night they were taken. She told them about the warehouse, the rows of beds, the women being held there, the men in masks, the procedures. She described Terrell's face, his voice, the things he said. But when the agents asked her to identify the exact location of the facility, Jennifer couldn't. She had been blindfolded during most of the transport. She had no idea where in Georgia the warehouse was located. She couldn't even tell them how long the drive had been. Time had lost all meaning in the darkness and terror. The FBI agents assured Jennifer that they would find the facility and shut it down. They explained that this was now a multi-state task force involving the FBI, ICE, Homeland Security, and even Interpol, because of the international trafficking network involved. Their primary targets were Terrell Booker and the Chinese syndicate running the operation. The agents told Jennifer that she and Mary would be protected, that they would be safe, that justice would be served. But Jennifer didn't care about justice. She didn't care about Terrell going to prison or the syndicate being dismantled. All she cared about was the broken, silent girl sitting in a hospital bed down the hall who used to be her daughter. After some days in the hospital, Jennifer and Mary were cleared to go home. The FBI arranged for them to fly back to their home state under protection. Shayna was waiting at the airport when they arrived, and the moment she saw her sister, she burst into tears. She ran to Jennifer and threw her arms around her, holding her so tight Jennifer could barely breathe. "Oh my God, Jen. Oh my God, you're alive. You're really alive." Jennifer hugged her sister back, but felt nothing. No relief. No joy. Just emptiness. Shayna pulled back and looked at Mary, who stood a few feet away staring at the ground. "Mary, sweetie, it's Aunt Shayna. Do you remember me?" Mary didn't respond, didn't even look up. Shayna's face crumpled. "What did they do to her?" she whispered. Jennifer's voice was hollow when she answered. "They broke her. I lost her, Shayna. She's alive, but I lost her." The ride back to Shayna's house was silent. Mary sat in the back seat staring out the window. Jennifer sat next to her, holding her hand, but Mary's hand stayed limp and unresponsive. Shayna kept glancing in the rearview mirror, tears streaming down her face. but she didn't say anything. What was there to say? When they got to the house, Shayna had prepared a room for them. 2 beds, clean clothes, everything they might need. Mary walked into the room and lay down on one of the beds, curling into a ball and facing the wall. Jennifer sat on the other bed and watched her daughter, feeling more helpless than she had ever felt in her life. The weeks that followed were a blur of therapy appointments, medical follow-ups, and FBI interviews. Jennifer started seeing a trauma therapist 3 times a week. The sessions were brutal. Jennifer talked about the guilt, the shame, the overwhelming feeling that she had destroyed her daughter's life. The therapist kept saying the same things. You were manipulated. You were a victim too. This wasn't your fault. But Jennifer couldn't believe it. Every time she looked at Mary's blank, empty face, she saw proof of her failure as a mother. I was supposed to protect her, Jennifer would say over and over. That's all I've ever tried to do. And I handed her to a monster. How do I live with that? Mary was placed in a specialized trauma recovery program for young survivors of trafficking and abuse. She attended therapy sessions 5 days a week with doctors who specialized in selective mutism and dissociation. But months passed, and Mary still didn't speak. She didn't make eye contact. She barely ate unless someone sat with her and reminded her to take each bite. She moved through the world like a ghost, present but not really there. The doctors kept saying it would take time, that healing wasn't linear, that they shouldn't give up hope. But they also warned Jennifer to prepare for the possibility that Mary might never fully recover. Some trauma runs so deep that it changes a person forever. And Mary had been changed in ways that no amount of therapy could undo. Jennifer tried everything. She slept in Mary's room at night, hoping her presence would comfort her daughter. She talked to Mary constantly, telling her stories, sharing memories, reminding her of who she used to be. She played Mary's favorite music, cooked her favorite foods, showed her photos from happier times. But nothing worked. Mary remained locked inside herself, unreachable and untouchable. And every day that passed without progress, Jennifer died a little more inside. She had survived 6 months of hell. She had endured torture and humiliation and unspeakable horror. But watching her daughter disappear into herself was worse than anything the traffickers had done to her body. This was a different kind of death. Slower, more painful, and there was no escape from it. While Jennifer fought to reclaim her life, federal agents were building a case, and what they discovered was far worse than anyone imagined. Special Agent Carolyn Mitchell had been with the FBI's Human Trafficking Division for 12 years, and she had seen things that most people couldn't imagine. But when Jennifer and Mary's case landed on her desk, even she felt sick. This wasn't just a kidnapping. This wasn't just trafficking. This was an organized, international operation that had been running for years, destroying lives and making millions while hiding in plain sight. Agent Mitchell assembled a task force immediately. She brought in agents from ICE, Homeland Security, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The goal was simple but massive: dismantle the entire syndicate and arrest every single person involved. It would take months of work, hundreds of hours of investigation, and cooperation across multiple agencies and countries. But Mitchell was determined. Women like Jennifer and Mary deserved justice, and the monsters who had done this to them deserved to rot in prison for the rest of their lives. The investigation started with Terrell Booker. The FBI had already traced the ransom messages back to him, but now they needed to build a case that would hold up in court and lead them to the larger network. They started by subpoenaing Terrell's phone records, and what they found was damning. Over the past 3 years, Terrell had been in contact with at least 40 different women through various dating apps. The pattern was always the same: weeks of messages, building trust, making promises, and then suddenly, the women would stop responding. Most of them had disappeared. The FBI cross-referenced the names and photos with missing persons reports and found matches for at least 15 women. All of them had gone missing within days of agreeing to meet Terrell in person. All of them had never been seen again. Jennifer and Mary were just 2 names on a very long list. Terrell's financial records told an even darker story. The FBI found payments coming into his accounts from encrypted offshore accounts that were eventually traced back to Chinese nationals with known ties to organized crime. Each payment was around $20,000, and they always came within a week of a woman going missing. Terrell was being paid per victim delivered, just like Jennifer had suspected. But the FBI also found something else: location data from Terrell's phone that placed him at the same address outside Macon, Georgia, multiple times over the past 2 years. Always at night. Always staying for just a few hours before leaving. That address became the FBI's primary target, and when they ran surveillance on it, they realized they had found the facility where Jennifer and Mary had been held. But the investigation didn't stop with Terrell. The more the FBI dug, the bigger the picture became. The egg harvesting operation that had destroyed Jennifer and Mary wasn't isolated to Georgia. It was part of a massive global fertility black market that operated in multiple countries across 3 continents. The FBI worked with Interpol to map out the network, and what they discovered was staggering. There were facilities in California, Texas, Ukraine, Moldova, Thailand, and the Philippines. All of them were running the same operation, trafficking women, forcing them into egg harvesting, and selling the eggs to buyers willing to pay top dollar for specific genetic profiles. The estimated annual revenue from this network was over $200 million. It was one of the most profitable trafficking operations in the world, and most people had no idea it even existed. The recruitment network was just as extensive as the facilities. Terrell wasn't the only recruiter working for the syndicate. The FBI identified at least 15 other men operating in different cities across the United States. All of them used the same tactics: fake dating profiles, fake job postings, modeling, scams, mail-order bride schemes. They targeted women who were vulnerable: single mothers, recent immigrants, women struggling financially, women who had just gone through breakups or divorces. They looked for loneliness, desperation, hope, and then they exploited it. The FBI found evidence of at least 100 women who had been lured and trafficked by this network in the United States alone. Globally, the number was likely in the thousands, and most of them had never been reported missing because they had no family, no support system, no one who noticed when they disappeared. Once the FBI identified the facility outside Macon, they began round-the-clock surveillance. The location was an abandoned medical clinic that had been converted into what looked like a legitimate wellness center from the outside. But the surveillance footage told a different story. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter at all hours. Medical supply trucks arrived weekly, delivering equipment and pharmaceuticals that had no business being in a wellness clinic. And most damning of all, the agents observed women being transported in and out of the facility in unmarked vans, always at night, always under guard. The FBI knew they had found the right place, but they couldn't just raid it immediately. They needed to gather enough evidence to prosecute everyone involved, and they needed to coordinate with local and federal agencies to make sure the raid was executed properly. So they watched, and they waited, and they built their case. 3 weeks after Jennifer and Mary were released, the FBI was ready to move. Over 100 agents participated in the operation. FBI, ICE, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and local SWAT teams. They surrounded the building and moved in simultaneously from all entry points. The guards tried to resist but were quickly overwhelmed. Within 20 minutes, the facility was secured, and what the agents found inside confirmed every horrifying detail Jennifer had described. There were rows of beds with women lying on them in various states of distress. Some were hooked up to IVs. Some were unconscious. Some were crying. All of them looked sick, malnourished, and terrified. The agents immediately began evacuating the women and providing medical care. In total, 23 women were rescued that morning. Their ages ranged from 16 to 34. They came from 8 different countries, and every single one of them had a story like Jennifer's. They had trusted someone who had betrayed them. 9 men were arrested on site. Some were guards. Some claimed to be medical staff, though none of them had legitimate medical credentials. Others were syndicate members who managed the day-to-day operations. All of them were taken into custody and charged with multiple felonies. The FBI also seized everything inside the facility: medical equipment, computers, financial records, encrypted communication devices. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed that at least 80 women had been processed through this facility over the past 2 years. The transactions detailed in those records added up to millions of dollars in illegal profits. And perhaps most damning, the FBI found a list of buyers, fertility clinics in China, Russia, and several Middle Eastern countries that had been purchasing eggs from the syndicate for years. But not all the women were accounted for. The records showed 80 women had been brought to the facility, but only 23 were rescued during the raid. That meant at least 57 women were unaccounted for. Some of them, the FBI learned through interrogations, had been moved to other facilities when they became too sick or too difficult to manage. Others had simply disappeared. The syndicate members refused to say what had happened to them, but the FBI suspected the worst. Some of those women were dead. Their bodies had likely been disposed of in ways that would make them impossible to identify. The agents searching the property found a burn pit in the back of the building, and forensic teams were called in to search for remains. It would take months to process the site and identify any victims. But the grim reality was clear. This operation had claimed lives, and not all of them would ever be recovered. On the same morning as the raid, a separate team of FBI agents moved in on Terrell Booker's apartment in Atlanta. They had a warrant for his arrest and a no-knock entry authorization because of the flight risk. When the agents breached the door at 5:15 a.m., Terrell was awake and already trying to destroy evidence. He was in the middle of wiping his phone when the agents stormed in. They found $47,000 in cash stashed in a bedroom closet, along with multiple fake IDs, burner phones, and a laptop full of incriminating files. Terrell tried to run. He made it as far as the parking lot before agents tackled him to the ground. He fought and screamed and demanded a lawyer, but it didn't matter. The evidence against him was overwhelming. As the agents cuffed him and read him his rights, Terrell spat at them and said, "I was just a middleman. You'll never catch the real people in charge. They're untouchable." Terrell was right about one thing. The leaders of the syndicate were still out there. The FBI traced the financial networks back to individuals based in China and Eastern Europe. Interpol issued arrest warrants, but most of the suspects were in countries that didn't cooperate with U.S. law enforcement. The syndicate's top leadership remained at large, and the operation continued running in other parts of the world. The FBI had shut down one facility and arrested one recruiter, but the network was vast and resilient. For every facility they closed, another one opened. For every recruiter they arrested, 2 more took his place. The fight was far from over. But for now, Terrell Booker was in custody, and he was facing the consequences of his actions. The charges against him were staggering. Federal charges included human trafficking, kidnapping, conspiracy, wire fraud, and money laundering. State charges included aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and racketeering. Combined, he was facing life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 50 years. His trial was set for the following year, and the FBI had more than enough evidence to convict him. Terrell's life as he knew it was over. But for Jennifer and Mary, the real battle was just beginning. The battle to heal from what he had done to them. And that was a fight that no arrest, no conviction, no prison sentence could win for them. Terrell Booker's trial happened 11 months after the rescue. Jennifer testified, describing the grooming, the betrayal, the captivity. "He didn't just take our freedom," she said. "He took our ability to trust the world." Terrell showed no remorse. He smirked during parts of her testimony. Mary refused to testify, too traumatized to face him. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, life in prison without parole, plus 50 years. But Jennifer felt nothing. "He's in prison, but I'm still in a prison of my own mind." The syndicate leaders were never caught. Other facilities kept operating. More women were being trafficked every day. Justice had been served, but it wasn't closure. Then, 18 months and 3 weeks after rescue, Mary whispered her first words. "Mom." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Mary continued, "I don't blame you." Jennifer sobbed. "I blame me." Mary squeezed her hand. "He fooled both of us." Those words didn't erase the trauma, but they were a start. A crack in the wall. A small piece of hope that maybe they could find their way back to each other. They attended support groups for trafficking survivors. Mary was learning to trust again. It would take years. Jennifer's mission became clear. I want to stop this from happening to anyone else. Other victims had similar stories. Brianna Wallace, 28, was lured through a job posting and trapped for 9 months. Elena Rodriguez, 22, was promised a modeling career. Aaliyah Turner, 31, met her boyfriend online and was trafficked along with her son. All of them shared the same recruiter network. All of them had trusted someone who destroyed them. Law enforcement faced huge challenges. Operations across borders created jurisdiction issues. Encrypted communications were hard to trace. Victims were too traumatized to testify, and facilities shut down only to reopen elsewhere. The FBI had open investigations in 8 states, but resources were limited. Most people didn't even know this industry existed. We think trafficking is sex work, Jennifer said in her advocacy work. We don't realize it's medical exploitation too. The questions everyone needs to ask: would you have seen the signs? Would you have said no? Would you have walked away? Thousands of Americans are trafficked every year. Most cases are never reported. Those who escape rarely speak out. The network is still hunting. Jennifer and Mary survived, but they will never be the same. And somewhere tonight, someone is having their first conversation with a predator. Will they survive? Jennifer George and Mary George are alive, but they are not whole. They may never be. Terrell Booker is behind bars, life without parole. But the syndicate he served still operates, still profits, still destroys. The Georgia facility was shut down, but 3 more have opened since. This is the story we don't want to believe, that predators are everywhere, patient and terrifyingly effective. They don't look like monsters. They look like someone who could save you. And by the time you realize the truth, you're already trapped. But this story isn't finished. Investigators are still hunting the network leaders. They're still tracking recruiters. They're still rescuing victims. And part 2 of this investigation will reveal even more. If you want to know what happens next, you need to subscribe and turn on notifications right now. Part 2 is coming, and you don't want to miss it. Hit that like button if this story opened your eyes. Share this video with someone you care about, a friend, a family member, anyone who needs to hear this warning. Because awareness saves lives.